All right. So one more session here in the book of Revelation, number 12. And so little title today, the name, but in terms of our outline, the only area that we haven't covered in all the time we've invested discussing the book of Revelation, and we even have kind of touched on this, but is the fall of Babylon. So we're going to read these missing verses. I will say that I think in the course of our study, although it has been pretty thorough, obviously there's so much more that could be dug into. And one thing we didn't do a huge amount of is tying into other areas of the Bible that it's pretty clear that the Lord did put other passages that are in other parts of our collected Bible that complement and go with the book of Revelation. We did some of that when we talked about the four horsemen and when we talked about the two witnesses. But what we didn't really do is a lot looking at Matthew chapter 24, where Jesus himself prophesied about the last days. And there are certain things that do clearly resonate and connect. We didn't look very much at the book of Daniel, which has quite a bit that corresponds and seems pretty clearly to be overlapping descriptions of some of the same things. And we didn't really look at Ezekiel. There's a lot more that can be delved into. But our main objective was just to really consume what the actual book of Revelation actually says, and just observe it and appreciate it at least for the time being. That's kind of what we've focused on doing. So one part of a chapter that we didn't read, I don't think we actually read, is where there's this angel with a giant rainbow and there's this little book, and John eats the little book, and I'm completely I was about to say I'm completely at a loss to understand it. That's not really true. We're not reading it, but clearly it says, okay, you've got to consume this message, and then he tells him you've got to go and prophesy. You've got to share what you've consumed. The reason I say I'm at a loss is because when I read it, I just feel that there's more to it than just that. And like why the angel is described like he is, so forth, that part I don't know. I will say this, when I read it, I pretty much literally laugh like every time I read that passage. Now I'm wishing I had like put it on here to read, because what the way the narrative goes, John sees the angel holding the little book, and then somebody tells him to go and take the little book. And so nobody's going to think this is funny except for me, most likely. But so he walks up and he says, "Give me the little book." And whenever I read it, I just hear him like, "Give me the little book." And then the angel says, "Take it." And the angel says, "Take it, eat it up." Like, I don't care. Take it, eat it, for all I care. But that's the way I hear it in my mind when I read that. And he said, "Take it, eat it up, and it's going to be in your stomach, bitter as, whatever, a bitter thing or whatever." So yeah, but that's pretty fun. But anyway, we didn't take time in our lessons to read it. But we're going to read through Revelation 18 and the fall of Babylon, and then we're just going to make some observations about the name. So Revelation 18 says, "And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory," lit up. "And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. We mentioned before this tie-in of kings and merchants, like as peers and counterparts, kings and merchants. And when we think about how the world works, it makes perfect sense. People with political power and people with financial power go hand in hand. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues." And that just brings to mind 2 Corinthians 6:17. "Wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you." So this directive to come out, it's not just a book of Revelation prophecy thing, end time thing. It's a concept that we need to embrace living in the New Testament era at all, to come out from among them and be separate and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. We were just talking before we really got started here, though, about the impact that God positions us to make in this world. And coming out from among them doesn't mean isolating ourselves, but rather that we separate what our influences us, so that we can be a light and so that we can be a help, that the flow is coming from the Lord to us and then from us to the world, not that the flow is coming from the world to us, but the flow of influence is the Lord to me and then me to the world. So I have to come out in terms of how I connect and what I connect with that can impact me. John 15:19, this is Jesus speaking to his disciples saying, "If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. But not to be removed from the world. We're in it, we're not of it." That's a phrase that is not a direct scriptural quote, but it's a definite scriptural principle, particularly elaborated in John 15, if you read more of that chapter, maybe even that whole conversation going into 14 and 15 and 16. But that we're in this world to be a light to this world, but not to be a part of this world. So back to Revelation, come out of her, be not a partaker of her sins. Don't do what she does. Don't say what she says. Don't act like she acts. Just be different so that your light can shine. Nobody's looking to you for light if you're doing all the same things that they're doing. Verse 5, "For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double." So recognize that this world does not mean you any good. You know, the Bible tells us that Satan appears as an angel of light, but he doesn't represent the things of God. But there's a disguise there, right? He's a deceiver. And the systems of the world are in that spirit of Antichrist and can seem enticing, but the things of God are the things that are rewarding. While the world is enticing, it's not rewarding. It's the things of God that are rewarding. And so the thief, the devil is the thief, and he comes not but for to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And we need to understand that the systems of this world, the Antichrist systems of this world, are not here for you, but to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So the reward her even as she rewarded you, saying, "Hey, this Babylon the Great is not done anything in your interests, and so don't worry about being loyal." to her. All right, verse 7, how much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. And that's a big part of, if I can convey what I'm seeing here as the mindset and the attitude, it's a major part of the spirit of Antichrist, which is that I am self-sufficient and I'm going to take care of my own issues and you don't have to worry about me. Godliness says I am in need. I need the Lord. I need the Spirit of God. And Antichrist spirit says, I'm good. I'm not going to be brought down. I'm not going to be defeated. I've got my own means and they're going to work. And that's what, if you think of that, and then you tie in all the catastrophes of the book of Revelation, it's pretty much to verify that you were wrong, Babylon. You will see sorrow, and you cannot rely on yourself and the systems of this world. They are temporary, and that's been the message, to recognize that this world is temporary, and we need to look to the eternal.
Christian?
Yes.
There, I did.
You're freezing out a little bit.
Pardon?
You were freezing and glitching. I didn't actually hear what you said.
Come of her, the word.
So again, you're kind of breaking up, but I believe you were asking something about what is the reference to her, whether that's the world. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So yeah, and specifically, it's the if going back to the earlier verses, it's Babylon. And if you remember, the vision was of a woman that riding on the beast and dressed in scarlet and all that. Okay. And on her was the name Babylon the Great, mother of harlots. And so that's Babylon. But I do believe that, it's obviously spiritual realm and not specifically a geographical location, as we've talked about, but it's not just, I think that it represents beyond a city and, yes, the whole world. Like when Jesus is talking about the world, if you were of the world, I think that was pretty much synonymous with Babylon of the book of Revelation.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So verse 8 says, therefore, the therefore being because of this attitude that she has, saying, I'm good and I have no fear and I'm not going to have any problems. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And I want to remind us really quick that in the explanation that the angel gave to John of the things he was seeing when he saw the beast, and then he saw this woman, Babylon, riding on the beast, he told him that the 10 kings that were horns on the beast that the woman was riding on would end up turning on the woman. And, we talked about the chaos factor and chaos principle of the world, and that the Lord God is the King of kings. He's the master of all. And so even those elements of the universe that are outside, that are part of Antichrist system, they're actually still subject to the authority of God at all times. God can use anything and everything to his own purposes. And we've seen that in the Old Testament. There are multiple stories where it's revealed that God directed and caused a king of an ungodly nation, an ungodly king of an ungodly nation, to do a certain thing because God wanted that done. And we see that here too. Whatever the circumstances that would be part of the 10 kings turning on the city of Babylon, who knows what they may be. At that moment, whoever the players are in that circumstance will think, oh, it's because of this issue, or it's because of this, that, and the other. But it's really not any of that at all. It's really that all of y'all are actually subject to the master of the universe and the King of Kings, and he's just going to have you do his will. And so the strong is the Lord God who judges her, but he may even use ungodly elements to carry out that judgment. Verse 9 said, and the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thyine wood, I don't know how to pronounce that, and all manner vessels of ivory and all manner vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble. I'm starting to picture a huge junkyard piled up with so much stuff that at one time someone was reverencing and placing and taking such care for, whatever. But there comes a time when this stuff is not worth anything, and it's all just being piled and piled and piled to no glory and no benefit. And cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men, which have been merchandise in our history of this world. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. So all the things that made this city just beautiful, they're not there. Verse 15, the merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. Again, I don't think 1 hour means 60 minutes, but I do think it means quickly and in a sense instantaneously. It's like, man, it was all the glory was there, and boom, it's not there. Things changed just radically, drastically. Continuing that same verse says, and every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee. and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth, because of rejecting the message of God and of godliness. Let's just recall Revelation 13:10. Said, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And in Revelation 14:12 as a counterpart, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Patience and faith overcome the world. Patience and faith overcome the Babylon the Great, where Babylon opposes godliness and is the spirit of Antichrist, opposes faith, opposes relying on God, and promotes relying on self. That's why the blood of prophets and saints, because of the message that, hey, you may need to change to please the Lord, is not an acceptable message to worldliness and to Antichrist and to Babylon. That message that God's ways are what matters, God's opinions are what matters, and we need to align with him and come into the unity of the Spirit. You know, I think if you look at the flow of message that could be discerned as Antichrist message, the most prominent theme that will present itself in some various ways is not only a theme of self-reliance, but a theme of self-determination and a theme ultimately of self-will. I'll do what I want. That's my prerogative. I can say what I want to say. You can't tell me what to do. That's the spirit of Antichrist. And that's what kills the message of the prophets and of the saints. The message of God is, if you will humble yourself before me, I will lift you up. That's the message of God. Humble and submission to, because there's just no getting around the fact that he is the creator and he is the King of Kings. There's just no getting around that. And so humility and submission are appropriate. So the patience and the faith is when we have that realization and we know that, then we're not distracted by the light show of this world and the promises of what it promises, but we can wait for the Lord to do what he's going to do. And we know that the end of these things is going to be what it is. You know, a lot of times people, I think, find the book of Revelation frightening. And if you're dead set on resisting the Lord, then it should be frightening. But the message is not really a frightening message. The message is one of, hey, you don't need to resist the Lord, and you don't need to go along with the flow of this world, because it is running into destruction. And that's the back of the book message of Revelation, is that if you'll have patience and hang on to your faith, no matter what things look like in a moment, you'll be rewarded.